All right, welcome Legacy Volleyball Club to another meaningful Monday meeting with me, Brian Lindstrom. I'm one of the club directors and our 18 Adidas coach. And today, I'm going to talk about another book review. The last time we did the talent code, this day, we're going to actually talk about another book called The Entitlement Cure. And if you're up in my neck of woods, I'm going to also say happy spring break to everybody, as it's officially our spring break, but it doesn't really feel like it right now. So anyways, welcome to Legacy Volleyball Club, and we will get going with the Monday meeting. So the title of this is kind of been kicked around a handful of ways, and we call this the Why Me versus Try Me. And empowering attitudes and leaving behind what we call the disease of entitlement. And I want to give credit to a few sources here, and we'll start with the first one. This is a great resource for coaches. It's called Basketball Psychology, and actually players as well. They have great articles on here. And part of this comes from The Entitlement Cure. Not everyone gets a trophy. It's an article that was posted on Basketball Psychology. But it's a great website to sign up for. They send monthly emails out with just articles that are written particularly pertaining to basketball, but it really could be applied to all sports. And in the article, The Entitlement Cure, Not Everyone Gets a Trophy, they quote this book a lot, which I have read by Dr. John Townsend, which is The Entitlement Cure, Finding Success at Work and in Relationships in a Shortcut World. So the Basketball Psychology website took this book and went through and started to apply it to sports and what that stuff might look like. So we're going to quickly talk about this concept and this idea of what is entitlement, right? And we'll start here and kind of work our ways backwards. And I know we're talking about this idea of empowerment and mindset shift and everything else. But entitlement is simply the idea that you deny responsibility for your choices and you demand special treatment, right? And the Basketball Psychology does a great job of kind of breaking this down into sports speak, right? And so this idea that it's an attitudinal disease, right? You're refusing to accept responsibility. You're above the rules. I'm the victim. It's not my problem, not my fault. I should be appreciated just for showing up, and it's believing that I deserve. Okay. And so it manifests itself in different forms, but the key idea is that it's an attitude disease. And two recent pieces that I think would stick out great in the media are these two people right here. The one on the left being the spring break Brady kid that basically made the rounds all over the place. They were down in Florida when people were not supposed to be on the beaches. And he started saying, if I get Corona, I get Corona at the end of the day. I'm not going to let it stop me. And went on. And they interviewed a bunch of people in this area. And it was kind of like, the rules don't apply to me. I loved how one of them said, man, we had been planning this for 2 months. Like this was some, big family vacation and things that they had going down for spring break. And it was just this attitude of, hey, you know what? I'm above the rules. And it's your problem, not mine, right? And then the next one on the right is pains me very badly because I'm a former Chippewa. But right here, Antonio Brown, just his antics over the course of the past year and a half have really just showed like, hey, he's above the law on stuff, right? And so when we think of entitlement, those are two examples that pop up to me in the mass media, but it's not always about these figures that make public headlines, because we have these issues and we deal with this every day. And Dr. John Townsend says everybody has, in some shape or form, had this mindset of entitlement. And how do we react to it? So I want to actually go to this next slide here and talk about a few key pieces in the volleyball world. Starting with the first one, the former coach of Iowa. And I heard Bon Szymanski speak at a coach's clinic. And he started talking about this concept, this idea of empowerment, right? And how they have rules. They had to put rules in on their team as to how feedback was going to be given, because people saw it as evading responsibilities, right? The hitters would always yell at the setter, hey, I need the ball here. I need the ball there. It's too high, too short, so on and so forth. And it eventually became just the hitters yelling at the setter, right? And telling the setter that the setter had to make the adjustments It wasn't about the hitters themselves. So he had to put rules in. One of the rules I remember was this concept of that a hitter could not tell the setter where to put the set unless the hitter was actually on the right tempoed step at the right time, right? So if the middle was not where they were supposed to be, they couldn't say a word to the setter about the set. And he said, anecdotally, the conversation between our hitters and our setters, it drastically changed. It changed from this concept of like, well, you're on time and I can get you the ball here, and more of a cooperative attitude instead of it's your fault that I'm not getting what happens to be need done. And I've heard this on my teams. I've heard it from setters, hearing it from passers, right? The passers didn't pass the ball. So the setter had to work her butt to go get the ball and make the play. And, comments from the setters of, hey, get me the ball. You have to pass me the ball, right? And, maybe the argument is that the setter can't say that until the setter's doing the proper footwork, right? And the setter's in the proper position to get there and is doing everything they can to set the ball. So that's one example. The second one comes from Mark Rosen, Coach Mark at the University of Michigan. And working his camps and being around him, he loves to describe on defense that the ball is the one that's going to decide it's down, not the player, right? Because talking about defensive attitude and hustling and watching players go after the ball. And he says, if you have this relentless attitude that, hey, the ball's going to decide it's down, not the player, that means you're going to go as hard as you possibly can. And there's no excuses for going after the ball. Let the ball decide it's down, not the players just looking at it and watching it drop, right? And he tries to set that attitude in his gym, and he tells it to the hundreds and thousands of campers that come through. It's one of his, staple talks is that, listen, like your attitude to getting the ball and what you're going to do with it comes from, your desire within and not having an excuse. Right. And the last piece, I just put a diagram up here of a kind of a simple perimeter outside defense. And I see this on my teams. Right. And if a tip lands where you see where the number 2 is kind of in the middle of the court, we have kids who look at each other and it's, well, it's your job to do this and it's your job to do that. And the conversation really is it's everybody's fault. Right. If the ball lands on the ground, did the blockers do their job? Did the defense do their job of being stopped and going after the ball? There's a ton of things that go into play, but I hear this, well, that's not my ball or that's not my responsibility. And the whole concept is the entire team loses the point. So it's everybody's, responsibility to play that ball. So just a few ideas as we start talking and how to link this back up to volleyball speak, right? And so in sports, what do we see, right? And you hear this today, and stealing this from the article, many believe they deserve a trophy, deserve more playing time, deserve a scholarship, deserve to be a certain position, all without having to do the hard work to earn them, right? And so this concept of everybody gets a trophy because they deserve it. And we hear this a lot in club sports. I hear it a lot in the classroom, right? I deserve better grades on something, right? And it's this concept in this word deserve. And if we skip to the next slide here, Dr. Townsend really talks about in his book this idea that we have to do stuff the hard way, right? The solution to entitlement is doing life the hard way, and that nobody owes us anything. And you're going to see how that's going to empower people as we go forward and go through it, right? So here's some great examples. So he gives us 4 basic tips of how do we empower ourselves and get ourselves to where we need to be. So the power of words, right? And his first tip is that words matter, and words reveal your thoughts. You can't actually say something you haven't first thought about, right? It's physically impossible to do this. And the words affect our feelings, behavior, relationships, emotions. What you're saying and how you say it to yourself and to others really matters, right? And so on the right-hand side, I deserve is a dangerous phrase. And if you start looking at this, you hear these things. I deserve more playing time. I deserve to be MVP. I deserve a day off. We deserve a break. I deserve to start. I deserve to be more appreciated. And these are conversations as club directors and as coaches that we have to deal with all the time, talking about what do people deserve and how do they deserve it? And so if we're talking about playing time, this comes up a lot, right? This concept of it has to be given to you. Okay. And so let's talk about why deserve is a dangerous phrase. Like, I deserve something. And the reason is because it's disempowering, right? And if we focus on this word, we're talking about this idea that it takes the power out of your control, right? It's basically saying that something has to be given to you, right? There's nothing I can do to get it. I have to sit around and wait for somebody else to give it to me. And so the player who is, at the bench, that's not getting the playing time, or the role that they have is, well, you know what, I'm on this team, so I deserve to do this, right? Or because players were on the team the year before, I deserve to be on the team the next year, right? And those thoughts and those that speak is just, it's kind of disempowering, right? You're actually giving it to somebody else to make those choices for you, right? And as a coach, I love to tell my players, prove me wrong. I hope you prove me wrong, right? If I have a player who I sit for rotation, or I make a lineup change and I was thinking, hey, I want it to be this, I want you to prove me wrong. Come out and show me that I can't take you out of the match. You're playing so well. You're working so hard at practice. You're doing all these extra things. You're putting in all this extra time that I can't make that choice to actually take that away from you, right? And so, yeah, at the end of the day, the coaches are responsible for putting in the lineups and all that other stuff. But what have you done? What have you done to really take control of it and not put it at the coach's whim, right? And we get this from parents as well. Parents will come out and say, hey, my kid deserves more playing time. And it just kind of sounds like the player has no control in that whatsoever, right? They have the ability to talk to the coach. They have the ability to work on things they need to work on and do all that extra stuff, right? And so instead of saying, I deserve something, what about I'm responsible? And listen to how the power of this word change goes from disempowering to empowering, right? I am responsible to do what it takes for more playing time, right? Like, think about the connotations of that. What does that mean? What are you going to do? If you're responsible for more playing time, that means you're going to get into the gym and you're going to work on, more reps. You're going to work out. You're going to watch film. You're going to do all these extra things for your playing time. If you're responsible for that, you know the list of things that it's going to take to get there, right? And so making that change in our head of when things aren't going our way, instead of I'm deserving, how about saying I'm responsible, right? So again, you feel helpless when you think you deserve things. When you're a person of high ownership, you feel capable of anything because you have the power to make it change. So think about that again. When you deserve things, you feel helpless, like it's out of my control. Like people have to give this stuff to me. And it's not about you and the work that you're able to put in and the work that you're able to go through, right? Let's talk about this one more real quick before we take off and go to the next one. The conversation also happens with parents talking to kids, right? And when parents talk to kids and say, you deserve this, or you need this, or you should be getting more of this, it's really taking the ball out of their court, right? It's saying that they are going to rely on somebody else. They're going to rely on the teacher to give them a better grade instead of saying, hey, I'm going to work really, really hard to get to where I need to be. And I'm going to work at this paper multiple times over. And when things come down that are tough and things come down that aren't going your way, how are you going to respond, right? And I sit and look at this current situation right here of what are we doing during this time off? If you're watching this video, you're working on getting better, right? You're saying, I'm responsible to upkeep my volleyball skills and upkeep my athleticism, and stuff's just not going to be handed back to me when I get back to the court and we get back to our team, right? And that includes going on through into high school volleyball, right? What are we going to do during this time to really sit back and say, hey, I'm going to start taking responsibility of this, right? I don't deserve to be handed anything, or this is where I was at before the break. This is where I want to be when I get back, and I'm going to be responsible for that. Tip number 2, coming from Dr. Townsend, do the hard things first, right? Do the hard things first. And he says it like this, you eat your dinner, then you get to eat your dessert, right? And it eliminates temptations of procrastinating and taking shortcuts. Make your number one priority doing the next hard thing, even if it's painful. and boring, requires more energy, takes more time, feels uncomfortable. Success is on the other side of that, right? And he gets down to this point of choose discipline, right? Choose the discipline to do what you have to do. And you're going to see books about successful people and all these things. And they talk about this all the time, that people do the hard things first. They get it done with. They go after it and they attack it instead of putting it off and putting it off and putting it off as it goes through. So choosing that discipline route. And I have kids who, that right now for school, I have kids that aren't necessarily being held responsible during the online learning piece with this. And I keep asking them and challenging them, like, are you guys putting the time in to be where you want to be, especially for the AP test coming up? So his tip number 2, do the hard things first, right? Go after it first, attack it first, do that morning workout that you didn't want to do, get it out of the way, and then attack the other things as you go through it throughout the rest of the day. Right? Tip number 3 from Dr. Townsend. Tip number 3, keep inconvenient commitments. And this goes along with tip number 2, right? But this idea is that it says that I'll keep this promise as long as it's convenient and a better offer doesn't come up, right? You know what? I'll be a part of this team, or I'll be a part of this group until a better offer comes along, right? So the concept is this idea that you have an impact on other people, right? And we talk about this with our teams about getting to the courts on time, being ready, and doing what you need to do to get yourself prepared, right? And it's inconvenient to wake up a half an hour earlier than you're supposed to do, or 15 minutes earlier than you're supposed to be getting up, to be ready and to be ready to go by this, and living by commitments, not just your feelings. I don't feel good about this today, so I have to stick to my commitment. And it's tough. It really is tough. To me, this sounds a lot like dieting, right? Like, I'm going to be stuck on this diet and I have this commitment, but I feel hungry and I don't want to be a part of it. And it's tough. And that's why diets fail, right? Because people don't want to stick to the hard commitment with this. And so Dr. Townsend says, listen, like, you will be empowered if you stick by your commitments and you feel good for doing the things that you say that you're going to do when you don't necessarily have to do that. Okay. Tip number 4, and this is kind of a tip that we talk about at our camps when I'm working with kids, is this engage in service. And I'm going to put a different spin. I'm going to put a volleyball spin on this. Right. And I love this quote. It's hard to be thinking about what you deserve when you're busy helping other people. Okay. Serving shifts your perspective, right? If you're busy helping other people, you're not thinking about yourself and you're doing what it takes to help others. And therefore, when you experience this, when you experience that selflessness and you experience, hey, this is what it is to have some empathy and to work with them, it gets rid of entitlement. Right? It gets you to this, I'm responsible for, I'm going to help out, right? We have lots of coaches in our club that were former players, and we have current players right now that are helping out. And I love nothing more as a coach than watching our current players go and coach another team, because it gives them some empathy for the people that they have to deal with, right? They're coaches on the other end with it. And they kind of see, hey, you know what, this is tough. And it gives them more experiences with that. But in my camps, I always talk about, hey, like when you're being a partner passer, right, and you're tossing to a partner, be the best tosser you can be, right? Cheer for your teammates, bring that vocal energy on, right? In the high school gyms, help set up the courts before practice, be the best partner tosser it is, shag volleyballs while a drill's going on, right? All of those little pieces help in putting other people ahead of you and really kind of getting out of your shell. Right. That and that other people matter as you're going through this. And it's a great way to get rid of that entitlement piece, because when you get stuck in that entitlement piece, it takes a long time to get out of. And there's hard conversations that have to be had. And I'm thinking about my 18s team as we're going through, and we had kids who've had super successful careers. And we talk about, 18s is a tough year because it's like they've been through it all. They've done it all. Right. How do we get them to want to push ahead? And it's this idea of they have a commitment and they're going to be the best person that they can be about it. And they can always improve on being better teammates, right? And helping each other out. And the question is, okay, so we don't have our team right now. So how do we do this Now, how do we go about and talk about this, right? Like, did you do your in-house workout today? Did you help a sibling or your parents out? Did you take responsibility into your own hands for something around the house that's been done for you, right? And I love this post that USA Volleyball put up. This is from the High Performance. They put a whole list of things up that was up on Twitter about 50 skills to master during the lockdown, right? And they just have a list of things that everybody has been retweeting about or commenting about on Instagram about, yes, these are so important, the skills to have, right? And, learning to create a resume, like talking about growth mindsets, like the stuff we worked on last week about this. On the right-hand side, the active part, doing your in-home workouts. The life skills piece, that's a huge one, right? Learn how to write a check, make a budget, test the smoke alarms, right? Emergency phone numbers, because everybody just has their phone number in their phone. Like, these are little things that are just boring and don't excite people or do anything, but they're important pieces. Like, look at it in the kitchen, learning how to make a smoothie or make a meal with a family member, like cleaning up after dinner. Like, all these little things are character builders, right? Where it's I'm not going to let people do it for me. I'm not going to let mom and dad just take over right now. I'm going to step up and become a better person for this as we're going through it, right? And I have to sit back and say, I have to be a better dad for doing those things and helping my wife out and take care of that stuff. And so it's an empowering attitude to sit back and say, listen, I'm responsible for this. It's not happening to me. It's not why me. I'm the one that's responsible. And we have many situations right now where people aren't, really responsible for what's going on. And that's what's kind of crazy. They don't have control over it. And so this is where you're going to really see people rise up, and you're going to see them say, hey, you know what? We're responsible. We're going to figure this out. We're going to find whether it's that loan, or we're going to find how to get through this. We're going to manage through tough situations instead of sitting back and saying, why is this happening to us? And I think that really, really big builds character in people. And when we start talking about being people first instead of athletes, when you're a great person and you get on that court, it just makes life easy. And for those of you who are going to the next level and looking to do that, that's the number one thing with colleges, right? Why do they trust seniors? Why do seniors get the playing time? Why is it about the seniors? It's because they've put those sacrifices in, and they've proven to their coaches that they are responsible people and that they're going to take ownership. And trust has to be built. When kids walk onto campus for the first time, there are going to be a lot of situations and a lot of scenarios that where kids are going to have to be trusted by some adults and by teammates that they haven't really worked around and had, been put in pressure situations with. And so that's one of the things in the recruiting piece is that coaches come up and talk. They want to know what type of person they are, and anecdotes to show that, hey, they're resilient, that they are showing a go after it, empowered mentality. Because the worst thing that a coach wants is a kid walking into the gym and saying, I deserve this, right? And maybe that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of kids in the transfer portal, is that they come in and it's, I deserve playing time, or I deserve this or that. And now all of a sudden they have to work for it, right? And they really, really have to get back to what do they want as a player, but showing coaches that they deserve to be there and to be on the court and the playing time. And we always have these questions about, if you're not getting the role that you want or doing the things that you want to do, what can you be the best at, right? And so that's our conversation for today. I'll flip back to the book. And so the book, again, if you're sitting around, is called The Entitlement Cure, Finding Success at Work and Within Relationships in a Shortcut World. And the other website that we have out there is Basketball Psychology. So if you guys get a few moments to go through and take a look at this, some of the articles they post are great for athletes, are great for coaches. And I steal stuff all the time to read to my kids. And we read this Entitlement Cure. Not everyone gets a trophy to my 18s team, at the beginning of the season, because it was, listen, like, nobody's going to give stuff to us just because we finished 5th in the nation last year. And we've got, kids who are top, 100 senior aces and all this other stuff. Nobody's just going to give it to us. Everybody's going to have to work for it. And that was one of our big messages this year at 18s, is that everybody that's playing wants to take you down, and you are owed nothing. You have to work for it. You have to work through it. And you have to be better teammates because of it. So checking in again, Basketball Psychology, the book, The Entitlement Cure, give you something to read and take a look at over the course of the next few days. Tomorrow, Tuesdays with Tyler, we got some technical stuff coming up, and we will look forward to talking to you next week. Have a good one.